Oh my goodness. Ay, ay, ay. Well, welcome to Domain to Profit, where we talk about domain names. And today we're going to talk about mascots. Mascots. What the heck do mascots have to do with anything? You might be wondering. Well, it just so happens that mascots actually play a major part in all of business, and they can play a major part in your domain business. You'll hear pretty frequently here, I will say, that we do business with people, not with buildings, not with brands, not with domain names. Yet, a lot of times me included, we want to advertise our domain names, we want to advertise our brand, our cool logo, but we're not putting a face to our business. Well, today we're going to talk about mascots and how I've used them and how I've encouraged other successful entrepreneurs to use mascots to put a face to their domain names, to their businesses with significant success. So we see the biggest businesses out there use mascots. So today we're going to be talking about why you should as well as we're going to look through some domain names, talk about some that maybe you should buy, some that you shouldn't. We'll see how the day goes. Let's get things started. Say hi in the chat. I'll see you on the other side.
From domain to profit, from a .com to a business idea. Take a domain name, develop an income from domain to profit. We'll show you how. Domain to profit, from domain to profit. Join Drew Wash and get started right now.
Back to normal head. I got Toby, our towing.com mascot, back up on the shelf where he belongs. It's actually, I think, the first time I've ever put my head in Toby. So, yeah, good stuff. If you're watching this on Restream, or if you're watching it live, I should say, make sure you go back and see the first couple seconds. It's fun stuff. More fun to watch probably than to actually, yeah, participate in. But okay, well, here we go. Lee, thanks for joining us. Michael, appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for always coming out and joining us here on Domain to Profit. I always appreciate you two saying hi in chat. And if you're joining us, say hi in the chat as well, because I love to know who's here. So today we are going to talk about mascots and why you should be using them for your business, whether it is an in-person type mascot like we have here, or part of a logo like we often put up on our websites where we have our domain name, our brand. Actually, let me pull one up. This is video, for goodness sakes. We don't need to just limit it to. So here is towing.com. So let me actually show you this. So up on towing.com, you'll see a familiar face. You'll see towing.com Toby, and that is right up here on the logo, as well as we use him around the site. And that is because we are presenting a face for towing.com. Businesses use faces. We all do business with faces. We do business with people. Even if we don't know those people, we want to see a person. In fact, when you view a magazine ad or you're watching some kind of advertisement, one of the first things you're going to look for is a face. So if you were to scan a website, you will look for faces, and then top left on down the website. But we look for faces. So you need to use faces, whether it's advertising on your website and, well, on your logo. So, yeah, it does look like somebody just mentioned that the video looks a little whopper-jawed. I see that too, but not much I'm going to do about it at this point. So, okay. Well, when it comes to mascots, the biggest businesses in the world use mascots. McDonald's, how many mascots does McDonald's have? And then, then of course, number 2, Burger King, comes in with their king guy. And then you got Wendy's with Wendy's. I mean, Wendy's, boom, female face right on their logo. Smart advertising, of course. You got Geico with the gecko, as well as Geico with all the other different mascots and funny characters that they include. So you might think, yeah, well, Drew, I'm just a guy that wants to develop out a domain name and I want to have my own business out there. Well, why would I need to bother with a mascot? And more importantly, how would you even get started on this, on creating a mascot? Well, I'm going to share all that today throughout the course of this broadcast. So stick with me. You're going to learn how you can add a mascot, why you should learn to add a mascot, as well as we're going to be talking about domain names too, because that's, well, what we do here. So when it comes to a mascot, I want to talk about domain names first. So if you're here for the mascot talk, let's talk mascots a little bit on the other side. I'm going to show you and share with you a website where you can get your own mascot, as well as we'll talk about logos and why, instead of having some weird little abstract image that represents your brand, you should have a face. You should put a character on there, just like I showed you we do with towing.com, as well as all of our other domain names that are really, well, I'll show it to you here in a little bit. So the reason why we are talking mascots a bit today is because our normal thing, looking through domain names here, let me zoom into this. So we usually go over to expireddomains.net and we run down through these domains. Just like I'm kind of doing right now, beerpitchers.com. And what I found was there's really not a ton of domain names that I'm really in love with this week. I've made it through the first several hundred domain names, and that one that I just did, musicaltours.com, that's the first domain name that I even kind of highlighted as wanting to share with you. So I was like, okay, well, this is a domain name show. What the heck am I going to talk to you about? Like, what am I going to do if I have no domains to share? So I went out to Twitter, and I was like, hey, Twitterverse, like, what questions might you have, or what should I talk about as far as domain names? I had a suggestion that, or a question that, how about talking about car dealership type websites, which car dealerships fall right in line with my primary business model, which is I love domain names that represent local industry. So a car dealership is going to be in one specific location. And so that kind of falls right in line with IMAS, Internet Marketing as a Service, which we've talked about that business model somewhat frequently on past episodes. And really, I hate buying cars. So I'm not really all that eager to talk about car dealership websites. So I will say, as far as car dealerships go, check out the Internet Marketing as a Service type shows that we've done in the past. There's some good information there. And, you're selling a physical product, but it's not a physical product that you can really ship. Although, realistically, I think Carvana tries to ship them, something like that. So another question was in specific to, let me go out to the notifications. And I believe it was this one here was asking about specifically, where was it? It was asking about weldingwork.com. And so I just want to share with you something I found when they were asking about weldingwork.com. They were asking, is it a domain name for development, possibly resale? And so I pulled it up here in SEMrush. Let me share that out to you, probably an important piece of it. And weldingwork.com, you'll see it, 1.6 thousand searches for that keyword, which is great. Exact searches are one of the things that we look for. Pretty good cost per click, $1.48. So I'm thinking, okay, this is looking like a pretty good domain name. And then I looked over here on the questions, and I see, how does welding work? And suddenly that made me realize that some of the quite a bit of that keyword volume are people looking for, instead of work, instead of jobs, which is one of the business models that we've talked about here on From Domain to Profit, they're possibly looking for more of a how-to. How does welding work? Thousand people asking that question right here through SEM Rush is what they're monitoring. So that means that this domain name, which I shared out on Twitter, would be, it's not so much a jobs board type play, most likely. It's likely going to be more of a how-to. How does welding work? Weldingwork.com. So I think you can monetize. So what I mentioned was you can take this domain name and monetize it through like a jobs board. So all those people looking for welding work. But then you could bring visitors to the site using content on that your users and other people can provide, showing how welding works. What does it look like to use this kind of welder, that kind of welder, and so on and so forth. So just wanted to share that out since I did put that out on Twitter and did get a couple good questions and some helpful information. So one of the things I want to point out to here, it looks like a good domain name, but we determined that through these questions, it might not be as good as what we had thought. It's not a straightforward jobs board type of site. Pretty helpful information. That's why these reports, like on SEM Rush and similar sites, Ahrefs, Ahrefs.com, I believe, and Moz.com. There's all kinds of different SEO keyword type domain services. SEM Rush is what I always tend to point everybody to. Well, you can, if you read this report and think about how people are using this keyword term, that the domain name dictates the content that people should put on that domain name, as well as the money side of this domain name. Hopefully that comes through mostly clear, or I hope that that comes through clearly for you. So there's some good content there. If you have a domain name that you're questioning, you can always, I think you get like one free search per day or something on SEM Rush. So you can do some research for free without paying for their service. But if you're doing this a lot, SEM Rush or some similar like product is certainly worth checking out. And that is listed on FromDomainToProfit.com under tools as well. So you can get to that domain or that site. So we were looking through expired domain names and not finding a ton of domains. We will look through more domains later on in the show. So if you're here to see what Drew finds in the list and some business plans and things, stick with us because that's how I'm going to fill the time towards the end. Because realistically, mascots, I got some good information, but it's not much. There's not much to say about them. But so let's get back to mascots. Mascots. We need a face associated with our domain name. You need a face associated with your business, not just your domain name. Chances are you don't want to stare at a camera lens like this. But like you need to do it. There needs to be a face associated with your business. So it could either be yours, or if you're shy, like I was back in the day when we came up with Toby, I did not want to be on camera. So in turn, we kind of roundabout way came up with Toby, and Toby was our mascot. Toby was the face of towing.com. Nowadays, I have just decided that this is something I have to do, so I do it, but your brand needs a mascot. So what we've done is when it comes down to towing.com, you'll find Toby all over towing.com. So boom, right up there in the logo, we use him. Where we used to just use the single logo, we toss Toby on things. And then you'll see like on DJs.com. Actually, I'm trying to think of if we ever updated it. No, we're using the old logo. Let me see if the other pages. We have a mascot with our penguin on it. The penguin being, let me go back to this camera. So this is our penguin. He's not even named yet, but our penguin is our DJ's mascot. And we have a version of that logo specifically for putting a face to DJs.com. And then let me see, what other sites do we have that? Pulling one up before I ever show it to you. Okay, here we go. And then the other one, which we don't really do a ton with, but you'll see here, movingcompany.com. Boom, we put a boxer, a dog, right on as our mascot. You see a lot of similarity between this and towing.com. So we very much live by the idea of we need a face associated with our brand. So how much does this stuff cost? Well, not much more than what you're probably paying for a Fiverr person to put together a logo for you. A couple $100. A lot of artists, here's what I found. A lot of artists, those who are out on Fiverr and putting together logo images and things for you, they love the opportunity to create a unique piece of character art. This is true. In fact, like when I'm sketching, a lot of times I will sketch a logo before I ever send it over to Fiverr. Like it's a heck of a lot of fun to put together that the logo with an animal. So in pretty much all cases, it starts off with me, sketching something together, bubble diagramming a logo. So think about what you want. Maybe something goes along with your logo or brand, maybe not, but create a mascot. What kind of mascot should you use? Well, here's some tips for you. Use something with a face naturally. It needs to have a face. I think it's Stanford University or whatever. They're the trees, and they literally like use like a tree and they put a face on it. Don't do that. Don't do a tube of toothpaste with a face on it, or a toothbrush with a face on it. It needs to naturally have a face. Otherwise, it's kind of weird. It's weird. So use something with a face. It doesn't have to be unique. You just need to have a character. So when we do trade shows, which a lot of times I like to do a trade shows or some type of events with our. So the reason why we have heads, physical mascots, is because we can go to a trade show, pull out the actual mascot, and people always they suddenly we go from just being a booth to an event. People want to be around a mascot. They want to take photos with the mascot. And I will tell you that Toby, he's a celebrity. He has his own Facebook page, and he I think he has more people that like Toby's Facebook page than towing.com has liking their Facebook page. At least that's how it used to be. He's taken thousands of photos with kids and adults, and we'll show up at trade shows and we'll have these big burly towers with, tattoos, facial hair and stuff, and they're just sitting there smiling, hanging out with Toby, taking a photo. So having mascot is kind of the moral of the story. If you're going to do physical events, you can do a physical mascot, which, how do you get one? Glad you asked. Let's go find out. So I looked up, let me go back to this. I looked up places to find mascots. I could build mascots. And you're going to be looking for a few $1,000s if you use a professional mascot place. I'm like, man, I just need good enough. I don't need top of the line mascot. I need something that a human can reasonably survive in for a short period of time. So I went searching around and I found a site called dhgate.com. You may know DHgate. I found it a while back, and basically this is a way for overseas sellers to sell worldwide, and DHgate helps with logistics. It's kind of like the Amazon of kind of cheap products or knockoff products even. So on here, what you're going to find is when you do a search for like dog mascot costume or mascot costume in general, you're going to find that people actually create mascot costumes and then sell them through here. And for a couple $100, you'll be able to find mascot costumes. So let me find one that we think looks of a reasonable quality. So one thing I will say is avoid anything that is the likeness of it is a trademark. You don't want to use some Disney Pixar mascot or anything like that. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's like there's a lot of them. Minions is a popular costume to this website. That it's a trademark. It's not unique to you. They're not going to associate a minion with your business. They're going to associate a minion. With Disney, with whatever the heck show that is. I can't even remember what it is. Anyhow, the Minions. So here's, for example, a dog costume or a dog mascot. A few $100 will get you the. It's typically a head, a body, some gloves, and then some boots. And when you get it, it will be pretty much like this. Typically handmade and like a foam head that you put your head into. And that's pretty much it. You can make customizations. You can request them to them. So you can start with this one and pretty much be like, hey, can you do the black as blue instead? Or make the white pink or something. Whatever it is that you want to do. These are being made custom. So basically you can create a custom mascot. So on Toby specifically, we had, we sent them an image that we had created that we had used to come up with this here. This is our little stuffed Toby doll. And part of the image, part of the drawing that we came up with Toby was for a little bit of a fancy tail here on the back. And when we did that, we were like, hey, we need to make sure that our mascot has that. So we sent that over to them and they created that for our Toby. But basically long story short, DHgate is a way to find mascot costumes for cheap. A few $100, you can get this. Just like a few $100, you can get a logo. If nothing else, it's a good Halloween costume. So let me see here. So anyhow, choose one that's close enough to it and request some customizations. $300 or so. And then if it's not caught in the blocked up canal, you'll have it in a few weeks. So there you go. DHgate, my secret for getting somewhat inexpensive mascot costumes. So as far as the logo, sketch it up. And as far as the physical mascot costume, if you decide you want to do that, there you go. DHgate to do that. And as far as these, grab one with a label. I think that they have it's a good domain name. It's customplushtoys.com. Boom, right there. Domain development, customplushtoys.com. What do you think's on customplushtoys.com? Yep, that's right. Custom Plush Toys. So we sent them over. They sent some back and forth some things. And then in turn, we got tagged for safety. They have the safety tag and everything else. And we have custom Toby dolls created. Customplushtoys.com is what that one is. So great domain name. Should be easy to remember. So there you go. There's some mascots. Do what the big guys do. Have a mascot. Use it in your logo. Use it if you do physical events. And you can thank me later because it's going to make an impact on your business. Suddenly, instead of being some boring old insurance booth or some boring domain name in the middle of some giant convention center, you're going to be that place with that cool, mascot, and all the kids or anybody around is going to want a photo with you. Make sure your mascot's pretty reasonable. There are some customizations that we've done to ours. Specifically, we added a fan to the head. Those things are freaking hot. I don't get in them. We actually just so happen to have Chaz, one of I don't think I'm actually allowed to tell you that. Well, I'll just say this. Chaz, who is one of our coders, just so happens to have mascot experience. So he's like practically a pro at doing it. So you can also maybe get your teenage nephews. Can't say if that's ever happened or not. There's all kinds of etiquette. So, okay, well, Jason's coming in tardy. If you're like Jason coming in tardy or missed if you're viewing this live, you're coming in the middle of it, make sure you see the mascot usage at the beginning of this broadcast. It was fun stuff. So we've been talking about mascots a little bit, well, quite a bit, because, we're going to dive into some domains and realistically, we've not found a whole lot today. We've not found a whole lot of domain names available that are worth really talking about. So we've won a few hundred domain names into the list over on expireddomains.net, and realistically, not been finding a whole lot. So I'm going to go back over to expireddomains.net and let's see what else we can pick up on. Feel free to let me know what your mascot would be. If you're watching this restream or watching it live, if you were to put together a mascot, and in fact, for any of these domains that we bring up, I want to know what mascot would you pair with that domain name? Whether it's a bird, whether it's a plane, whether it's a dog, whether it's a cat, whatever it is, what mascot would you want to have represent your brand? And if you have a reason why other than just it's your favorite animal, then so be it. Okay, so here we are back over to expireddomains.net. You'll see here musical tours. I believe that's a pretty straightforward domain name as to why I would highlight that one. So what would it seems like a pretty big domain name. The idea, I'd try to avoid, personally, I try to avoid projects that involve calendars or dates. They're just a pain in the butt. Like dealing with calendars, dates, times, events, it's complicated programming. It's more complicated programming than what it should be. You'd think it would be easy, but somehow once you add that into the equation, you have time zones, you have leap years, you have importing, exporting calendars, all these different things. I avoid them like the plague. So, but musicaltours.com, always a great thing to, there's musical tours that are out there. So whether it's bands, whether it's, anything musical, it's going to tour. You can track it on musicaltours.com, maybe get some user interaction, get people to post photos from the shows, maybe what t-shirts they wore or whatever else. So if you were to develop out musicaltours.com, share in the comments or in the chat what you would do with it. And then, of course, what mascot would you use for a musical tour type website? Kind of the fun. So weldingwork.com, that's the one that was mentioned. I didn't realize that was an expiring domain name, but that one was mentioned via Twitter. That's what we were looking at just a little bit ago. Went through the first two pages, so 400 domain names, the 400 highest appraised GoDaddy domains, and I did not mark a single one as interesting. So what I'm going to do, and this is something that Matt, one of my programmers, he does some streaming over on Twitch. He mentioned, like, so you pass up on 400 domain names that other people are willing to pay thousands of dollars for. Why'd you pass on them? That's something you should tell people. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to say paycams.com. That's probably a little on the adult side, I would imagine, but certainly a domain name that seems pretty good to me, Paycams. Car clothing, brandable. Performance Kings. So again, just because they're words together that sound reasonable doesn't mean they're the kind of domain name that we're looking for development. So I'm going to go down to this third page of several hundred more domain names, and then we will go over and I'm going to go back up to the top of the list, and we will try to find, and we'll talk about why some of those domains that others are going to be paying thousands for may not be the best one for your development, for developing. Why would you get it is pretty much, or why should you not get it for domain development? Words escape me sometimes. Often, actually. Okay. freediscgolf.com. There you go. Okay, so we're going to go back out to the top of the list. So here you go. We have it down to the top domain names here for. I'm going to keep this zoomed out. This is going to be a little hard to read, but I will read off the domain name. The top domain name currently that GoDaddy has appraised at $15,700. Currently has a bid of $3,600, and this is with the seven days left. Is paydirt.com. Paydirt.com, which, I mean, great domain name, right? I mean, it's something we've all heard. Paydirt.com, or the idea of pay dirt. Typically, what people would refer to when they're doing mining or something like that. It's a brandable. Why wouldn't I buy it for domain name? Well, what the heck does pay dirt even mean? Like, what would we put on pay dirt? It's not telling us what we would put on that domain name. So would you pay thousands of dollars for a domain name that isn't really describing what you're doing? Does this have authority? It might have some authority because realistically, people have heard the phrase paydirt.com, or paydirt, I should say. So they might be like, oh, you're paydirt? Paydirt too? That's awesome. But does it validate anything? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, you can possibly use it for a marketing company. It's really tough to say. I don't know. So those are two of the things. Scarcity. I mean, only one person could own paydirt.com, but how many people are out to get paydirt? I mean, you may be looking for paydirt out in the real world, but as far as a domain name, it's going to have a few dozen people bidding on it. Realistically, though, I don't know. So when it comes to domain development, just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean you need to do it. So when it comes to paydirt.com, though, I could see like a gold digger mascot or something. That'd be kind of fun. Yes, and that's here it is. Ryan's mentioning here. Brandables is not. We're correct. I don't like brandables. If you are running a company already that has something to do with a brandable, and you're already loved, you already have something, then a brandable makes sense. If you have a great product already set up, then sure, brandable may be worth something. But if you are, if you're starting from scratch, then a brandable, it doesn't really help you much. I have a image that I use to illustrate this. I'm going to step off camera for 1 second. Okay, maybe not. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw up this image because I haven't drawn it in a while. So what it comes down to is we talk about domain names are the ground that we build on. So when we are developing out a domain name, the foundation is the domain name. And the foundation is the authority that provides, the validation. A good domain name is going to provide these things. So any domain name, though, can be used to build a business. So a lot of times, if you want to build something amazing, if you want to build some giant enterprise, you can build it on any domain name. It doesn't need to be a .com even. It could be any domain name out there. Just think about giant brands that you know. Chances are and they had a great product that they built on that domain name, and then they went for the .com because they wanted to make sure that they were collecting that authority, they were collecting the validation that the .com provided. So any domain name could be used as real estate to build something amazing. But then when it comes down to the idea of, starting with a domain name. So we're using a domain name to start our business. That's kind of the key thing when it comes to domain development or what we talk about here. The domain name is the start of the whole thing. You can look for a domain name that's in your arena already, but realistically, in that case, you might go for a brandable, but that means you've already done this work. You've already established a, traffic or a brand or a service or product, and now you're just kind of adding on a cool brandable thing. Or you start with a brand, but then you have to painstakingly work to build this, build out your enterprise. What we want to do is, instead of building up, we just want to tap this. And we're just trying to tap the domain name to where we can pull out some revenue. That's what we're out to do, is just tap the value that is the domain name and make that our business, pulling out revenue. So we talk about something similar to this on the show pretty frequently. I have another image somewhere. Good enough. So there you go. So that's how we kind of build it out. You can use any domain name to build your enterprise. What we're looking for, those domain names that we can just tap and pull out some form of revenue in the form of using time and scarcity, to where it's like, hey, people want this domain name because it provides authority and validation. That authority and validation will be there like forever. So how do we just use that to make some money? So using it like real estate. Let me see. Yeah, here you go. And then Jason, there's a big difference between a gold miner and a gold digger. Yeah, well, it depends. I have to filter. I'm going to filter. Actually, no, I was going to say it depends on what the hair color is, maybe. Yeah. Okay, so there we go. Let's go back over to our screens. And I got pink all over my sleeve from my beautiful Skycam. I haven't used Skycam as much as what I love Skycam. So let's see here. A laser disc I enjoy. I think that's a fun term. But again, does anybody actually use laser disc? Look at this. 1995 is when this domain name was registered. So that's old school. The only thing is that's back when laser discs actually were used. Nowadays, nobody even uses CDs, let alone nobody uses CDs or DVDs. Do we even use discs? I don't even think we use discs for anything anymore. So again, this domain name, it's an old domain name. What you'll see here, the second column, these columns are showing that it does have a little bit of SEO juice. So search engine optimization has some authority, has some links going to it. GoDaddy thinks it's worth $8,000 some dollars, and currently it has 24 bids for $209. The only thing is using it like a brandable, sure, but you're not going to sell laser discs on laserdisc.com, unless you're selling practically digital antiques, maybe. Listit.com. That one's actually not bad. I enjoy the idea of Listit. There's a lot you can do with lists. In some ways, towing.com or directory type sites or lists. But again, that's going to be more of a brandable. It's a brandable describing what it is that you do on the domain name. Maybe. Thing with that is $8,000 what GoDaddy thinks it's worth, and it's already up to $2,500. So certainly not something I'm necessarily interested in. System pay, words are backwards, so that's going to get its appraisal. So if you're thinking system pay, that sounds pretty good. Well, if it was pay system, that would be freaking awesome. But system pay, it's probably getting its high appraisal because it has two words that are valuable, but they're in the reverse. So you're not really getting the authority or validation. What you're getting is two words that sound valuable. So I would avoid that one. Easy rides. I don't 100%. Easy ride. Does somebody want? Excuse me. Does somebody want to start a business providing easy rides? I don't really know if that's a thing. I got a tickle starting up in the throat. We'll see how this goes. And let's see here. Now, commenter. I thought about mentioning this one on the show. The only thing is I think there's some alternative spellings for that domain name, if I'm not mistaken. Anyhow, it's a good authoritative domain name. let's go research a little bit. So this is the domain name commenter. The only thing is I'm just not sure if it's I believe there's alternative spellings. I'm trying to see. So there's a couple different things that I'll point out on this one. One, I think there might be alternative spellings, but even if that is the correct way to say commenter, what are you going to do with that? Like, are you going to? I mean, there's 4,040 or 4,400 exact searches for it. There's no cost per click behind it. Why that? I don't know. People are searching to know what people are commenting on things. The questions that are being asked are, how to delete a comment on Instagram. So people possibly are asking, like, how do I delete a commenter's comment or something like that? It's just, it gets some search engine, some search volume, but realistically, it probably just looks good to GoDaddy, which is why they're ranking it or, putting the value at 6,500. I'd avoid it. I don't really understand what you would do with it. Yeah, exactly. Here we go. Thank you. I was kind of hoping somebody would chime in with that, which is this commenter with I thought O would be the better version of it. Let's see what that does as far as SEMrush if we change it to O. But even still, even with the correct or the more popular version, I still don't know what you necessarily do with it. It looks like GoDaddy or at least SEMrush is auto-correcting the spelling. So anyhow, I don't know what you would necessarily do with it. It could be a pretty good product name. You could possibly use it as if you were writing a script or a service that, hey, if you want people to be able to comment on your website or on your photos or something, use commenter.com. But again, that's falling into that brandable type, realm, which you could do it. It's just, it's not you're not gonna get that. I mean, it sounds like a good domain. I wish there was a better way. How can I say this? There are some names, when you say it, you know what it means. And for example, towing.com, what's going to be on that? It's going to show towing stuff, whether it's towing companies or towing products. You have an idea of what's going to be on it. When you hear commenter, it sounds like a pretty good domain name, especially to other domainers. We're like, oh, that sounds good. That put some money behind that. But realistically, to the public, if you were to ask 10 people walking down the street, what do you think's on commenter.com? They're not going to have a clue. You're going to get 10 different answers from 10 different people. So you're going to lose that, the authority and validation of what it is that you're creating. I'll get off of that by now. I think I've beat that home. I know that there's people out there that may be looking at a domain name like that and be like, hey, I know one word, keyword.com domain names are valuable. I think we just saw there's a domain name that just sold for like $900,000. That was a little bit of a weird domain name. I can't remember what it was, but they sell for six figures pretty frequently. So you might be like, hey, I'm gonna put $10,000 or something on my credit card and get this domain name, and that would be a mistake. That would be a rookie mistake because, well, you may be able to sell it someday, but you're going to be you're going to be buying something you probably shouldn't buy. As both an investor and a developer, I would avoid it. Oursurvey.com, it's a brandable for a survey type company. I enjoy it. I like survey type domains. This one specifically has a little bit of link traffic. It's from 99. So possibly worth something that you can do a survey type service, but our survey, I don't know. Like, will you fill out our survey? I mean, people say that. Fill out our survey. So oursurvey.com. It's a pretty good brandable. Says what it is. Going for $400 currently, and $5,000 is what GoDaddy is appraising it at. I could see that being a reasonable end user price, $5,000. As far as the development goes, it's within one day. I don't know. There you go. I mean, the way I would do this, I'd put up surveys and people could put it on the bottom of their, receipts or all these different retail stores and restaurants ask you to fill out their survey. Well, now they can say, will you fill out our survey on oursurvey.com? Maybe a service there. I could have possibly tossed that one into the mix early on, but it's not a home run. Not usually what I find on the first page is the first page of the expired auctions. Scarts. That sounds weird. Yeah, and this is exactly so. When it comes to commenters, single word a lot of times people think this. If you are willing to pay millions for any single word domain name .com, then let me know because I got some of them I can sell you. I could promise you they're not. I think some of them are amazing, but they're certainly not worth millions. Yet maybe someday when the dollar inflates to the point that $1 million is worth a couple thousand. And again, I'm just looking down at these domains. I'm seeing if you see a domain name here on this list that you think, oh, why is he not talking about that one? Feel free to let me know. I'll tell you why I'm not talking about it. So that's kind of what I want to do a show where I talk about why I'm not interested in domain names that others are. And the thing is, I'm guessing most of these people would go, yeah, these aren't really great. Healing Springs, that sounds like a great brandable. Healing Springs sounds like a great resort name. Some SEO juice, I'm guessing that's going to go for a little bit of money. SEO juice meaning there's links to that, possibly some domain authority. Drilling consultants, way too niche. Lee mentions that it was, that self-made. Self-made's a great domain name. It was a math term. I half want to look it up. It was like recursive or something like that. It was more of a math term that somebody had done it. And oh yeah, Bitcoin Times. Thank you, Matt. Just pointed out that somebody mentioned. I saw that one up there. Bitcoin Times, like that one. Who knows? Like who knows with this stuff? It may end up selling. Bitcoin's a buzzword. So buzzwords can be profitable, especially to a domain investor. So if you're buying for the purpose of reselling, then Bitcoin Times. If you can get that for $1,000, I'm sure you can find a buyer for a few $1,000s. But I saw that one up at the top. Let me scroll back up there if I can find my mouse pointer. When it came to Bitcoin Times, which is this one here, it's at 228, appraised at $7,000, and that ends. So you'll see it's a week left on this. So that price is going to go up. If you can get it for cheap, it'd be one thing. Like if I put on my investor hat, I might go for Bitcoin Times and pay maybe $1,200. You can put a basic blog up on it, possibly get some ad revenue, get some traffic going. A blog would be the only development play that I could think of with that, is something to where it's like blogging about Bitcoin. But do people blog about US dollars? I mean, other than like, just there's so much content out there already of it's going up, it's going down. Like if it's your thing, then maybe you want to get it if you have some passion about it. I could see it being worth $1,200 to buy it. I'm guessing it's going to go for more than that, just because people attach Bitcoin to stuff and lose their freaking minds. And but as far as development goes, blogs about the only thing I could think of, because Times would associate it with news, and don't really know what else you would do with it. So yeah, that's kind of why I skipped that one. There's some that are investable, but not necessarily something that I'd be all that into developing. Hopefully that answered that a little bit, Ryan. Thanks for the question. And Matt, thank you for mentioning that. I get lost in the chat a little bit. So I do very much appreciate if you're watching live. I appreciate the chats and the questions all the time. I probably don't say that enough, but each time you ask a question, a puppy gets adopted and good things happen. So always ask questions. It's always appreciated. Yes, thank you, Lee. I knew that somebody had, like, it's like I didn't want to go out to Twitter looking for it, but Lee found it here. Recursion.com, $904,000 was the discovered sell price. One of the Twitter guys out there, George, I'm not going to go looking for it. George, somebody found this sale in an SEC filing. So $904,000, big money for a domain name that most people probably would only have for a couple hundred. That gives people hope. That makes you think, oh, my domains are gold. Well, they may be if you're willing to hold on forever. The only thing is then you're sitting there with some parking page. You're just an investor with a domain name sitting on a parked page, and the fact is that domain name's not bringing value to anybody. You're just cashing or hoping that someday you're going to make it rich, which drives me nuts. If you have a valuable domain name, it should be developed. Develop your domain names, bring value to the world, and then if you want to sell it, you're not just selling a domain name, you're selling a business. That's what this show is about, and it is why I do this, is because I want domains to be developed. If you own recursion.com and you want to just sit on that one, then go for it, because realistically, recursion is, I know there's a recursive algorithm is a way to do an old time sort in data processing, but I don't know. Does anybody even do recursive algorithms? Anyhow, basically it's more of a math data type term. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything else. I'm probably just going to go ahead and wrap things up. So, I don't know. So hopefully you learned something about mascots. It is something that I have shared with some pretty big companies out there, successful entrepreneurs, and some of which have added mascots to their companies with success. They're like a magic bullet sometimes, especially when you come down to things like towing or I'll admit I'm not a fun guy. Well, I'm a fun guy. I'm a riot in person. But, what we do as domain developers and things like that, it's a dry business. It's a dry thing that we do. There's not a lot of room for personality or having a lot of fun with it. A mascot adds life to it. And it adds that charisma and that character to something that otherwise might just be some domain name sitting around and people just it just creates curiosity. There's so much good stuff with it. So, as you develop out the domain name, I highly recommend, instead of some squiggly little line, GoDaddy's, whatever the little squiggly heart thing they have, add a freaking character, add a mascot. There you go, GoDaddy. I'll send you a bill later. Well, thanks for joining me. I always appreciate it and always appreciate the questions. I will be back next week. Hopefully GoDaddy or some of these other places. Hopefully we have some great domain names that we talk about. We'll talk about developing domain names, take a domain name, and turn it into a business that can change your life. That's what we want to do. So I will see you on Twitter throughout the week and back here Monday at 3 p.m. Take care.